A new fad that's sweeping the nation. Wasting food.
Fortunately, most of us have enough food to eat because there are entire industries working hard to get food to our tables. However, the downside to this success is that there is a lot of opportunity for waste. Sink your teeth into the top 10 insane restaurant food waste facts.
It is a sin to waste food.
By the numbers.
A lot of people do, and a lot of people are sorry.
The United States is a big country with more than 300 million people, so it's not surprising that there is a considerable amount of food being wasted every day. However, many people might not be aware of the numbers when it comes to food waste. So here's one to help put it in perspective. In 2017, as much as 103 million tons of food was wasted. This amount of waste adds up to about a pound of food for every person every day.
Whoa, that's a lot.
The waste occurs all along the supply chain, from the farms to individual households and every stop in between. This amount of food waste isn't cheap either because it adds up to around $160 billion a year, or $1,500 for an average family of 4. So it isn't just a problem of wasted food, but of wasted money as well. The U.S. has more food waste than any other country, and most of the wasted food ends up in landfills with the rest of the trash. This food waste amounts to almost a quarter of the solid waste found in landfills. Looks matter.
Those are shiny lemons.
In our modern world, appearances have become very important, and apparently this is just as true of the fruits and vegetables we buy at our local supermarkets. According to food experts, we as shoppers are very particular about the shape and color of the produce we purchase. If the produce doesn't meet our high and very subjective standards, those carrots, potatoes, and eggplants are often rejected. It's a bit irrational to reject fruits and vegetables purely on aesthetic grounds, as tempting as this might be.
The customer's always right. That's what everybody likes about us.
A bruised apple or a banana with a black mark is just as delicious and just as nutritious as the more pristine produce we covet. Unfortunately, advertisements that display only perfect produce and the stores themselves that flaunt the best items and try to hide the less than perfect ones have contributed to this problem a great deal. Because shoppers don't want the misshapen produce, stores don't want it either. But there are outlets for this misfit produce. Organizations like Imperfect Foods and Hungry Harvest are trying to put a dent in the food waste problem, so they will accept the imperfect foods and encourage shoppers to buy them. Environmental impact.
It's here at the landfill.
Millions of pounds of food rotting in landfills across America is unquestionably a waste of food, money, and other resources. But it is even worse than you thought. All of that rotting food releases large amounts of methane gas into the atmosphere, and methane gas is more damaging to the environment than the pollution cars emit. How bad is it? According to one study, methane is between 28 and 36 times more damaging than the carbon monoxide put out by cars.
What are we doing?
Landfills represent the third largest polluter of industrial methane, with food waste in landfills accounting for almost 10% of the total greenhouse gas emissions around the world. In recent years, some efforts have been made to combat the emissions caused by food waste in landfills. These growing efforts include organics recycling, compositing, as well as anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion is a biological process using microorganisms to break down biomass. In this case, it can be used to break down some of the food waste. These efforts can only have so much impact on the problem. In the long run, the only way to cut the emissions is to drastically cut the amount of food waste being dumped into landfills. Waste at home.
We're wasting somewhere between 15 and 25% of the food that we're buying.
Food waste happens in many places, but one of the insane food waste facts is that the biggest percentage of waste happens right in our homes. One estimate puts the amount of food waste in U.S. homes at about 76 million pounds every year. As much as 50% of all the food waste is by consumers. Unsurprisingly, the bulk of the wasted food is made up of fresh fruits and vegetables because many of these are highly perishable. The next biggest category of wasted items is dairy, and then meat and seafood.
That was 3 years ago.
We gotta throw it.
The most common reason that food is thrown out is that it has spoiled. The most common scenario behind this is that someone bought fresh food but failed to consume it before the expiration date, or before it actually started to spoil. However, some people often throw away food unnecessarily because the food hasn't started to go bad when they throw it out. Failing to store food properly contributes greatly to food spoiling prematurely, but buying too much food at once is also a problem that can be fixed with a little foresight. Better meal planning and more attention to proper food storage could help reduce wastage quite a bit once people are aware of the problem. Farming food waste.
That's also a really weird math problem.
Farms are, of course, where most of our food is produced, but we might not expect them to also be a major source of food waste as well. Unfortunately, about 20 billion pounds of fresh produce is wasted on American farms every year. All of this waste doesn't come cheap because farming accounts for 50% of the land and 80% of the water used in the country. One of the major reasons food is often wasted on farms is that they usually plant more than they need based on demand. It sounds strange, but it's a rational decision intended to guard against possible losses because of weather, pests, and disease.
Crap, won't survive the night.
This can lead to crops that are too big, and the food that isn't harvested and transported becomes food waste. Market conditions can also cause food waste because if the price the farmers can sell their produce for doesn't cover the costs of the harvests and transportation, the farmers sometimes make a business decision to let the food go to waste. The government has programs that purchase some of the excess produce from farmers so it can be donated to people in need instead of wasted. These are worthwhile programs. However, it can be an expensive and inefficient process that is not a real solution to food waste on farms. Waste not, want not.
The amount of food being wasted is a complete fiasco.
Our modern society is now a throwaway culture with many products designed to be disposable. This is profitable for manufacturers and convenient for consumers, but it uses a lot of resources and has the potential to create a lot of unnecessary waste. Nowhere is this state of affairs more clear than when it comes to the problem of food waste. Natural resources are not necessarily infinite, so wasting food is tremendously wasteful of the natural resources that are needed to produce all the food in the first place.
This is about 6 tons of food waste every single day.
We take it for granted that supermarkets near us will have what we want to buy whenever we want it. The supply chain that prepares, packages, and transports the food by rail and trucks uses a lot of labor and fuel. Large amounts of these resources are wasted transporting food that will be thrown in the garbage in short order. This is a particular concern now as the U.S. and much of the world is experiencing supply chain challenges for a number of reasons. Wasting foods adds a large and unnecessary burden to the already strained system we all rely on to eat. So the more efficient it can become, the better, because there will be less waste. Portions and purchasing.
Just because something doesn't look perfect doesn't mean that we shouldn't eat it.
Supply chains, the restaurant industry, and even farms play a role in food waste. While these are fairly high-profile contributors to the problem, there is a lesser offender, but still an important contributor to the food waste problem. Over the years, portion sizes at home, at restaurants, and institutions like schools have dramatically increased. A lot of food has to be ordered and purchased to create these larger portions, but a significant percentage of these larger portions end up being thrown out, contributing to food waste. When too much food is bought in the first place, it has to be stored for longer periods, and some of it simply goes bad before it can be used.
You're eating 8-year-old tomatoes. Still good for another week.
Some of the food waste also happens when people prepare or order food and simply don't finish it, so it goes into the garbage. Restaurants don't want to run out of food, so they tend to regularly over-purchase food and consider a certain amount of food waste to be a cost of doing business. This might make sense from a business standpoint, but clearly contributes to the overall food waste problem. Serving bigger portions isn't the answer because many people will leave food on the plate to be thrown out anyway. So more thought has to be put into the amount of food purchased as well as how much is prepared by households and restaurants. Restaurant waste.
You gonna eat all of that?
Restaurants serve a tremendous amount of food in the U.S., with most Americans eating several meals a week at fast food chains and other kinds of establishments. With all this food being transported, prepared, and sold, we have to assume that a lot of food will be wasted along the way. This assumption is correct because as much as 33 billion pounds of food is wasted by restaurants every year.
No way.
According to some studies, as much as 10% of the food purchased by restaurants is wasted before it ever reaches their customers. This seems like it could be an area of waste that should be focused on if the restaurant industry is serious about improving its performance and saving money. Most of the big chain restaurants tend to serve portions that are too big for many customers to finish. Many customers leave the food behind to be thrown out instead of taking it with them. Also, inflexible supply chain procedures that overbuy rather than risk running out of food further contributes to the problem. According to one study, as much as 55% of edible leftovers are left at restaurants by customers. So clearly, they are part of the problem as well. However, if the customers were served smaller portions, there would be fewer leftovers to waste. So everyone has some work to do when it comes to trying to solve the problem of food waste. Supply chain.
Getting a box like this delivered on time to the right door is a logistical nightmare.
The supply chain is a complex collection of processes and systems that includes everything from warehouses to trucks and the computer systems that try to manage them. With a sprawling and complicated system like this, it shouldn't be a surprise that there are a lot of opportunities for food waste to occur all along the chain. In theory, the system exists to be efficient, but it doesn't always work the way we would like. There is a lot of inefficiency in the system, which leads to insane food waste that we should work to correct.
Why?
About 12% of fresh fruits and vegetables that are cultivated are lost to waste, either while being distributed or after they reach stores. As much as 9.5% of all seafood is lost during distribution or after it reaches the store before it can be sold to customers. This can never be a perfect system because things like fruit, vegetables, and seafood can be highly perishable items that are subject to a certain amount of wastage and loss no matter what measures are taken. However, rethinking overproduction and improving the storage and transportation aspects of the supply chain can help reduce food waste for everyone. Government waste.
Up to 40% of food is wasted in this country.
Usually, when we hear about government waste, it has to do with wasting money, but this isn't always the case. Through bureaucratic inefficiency, all levels of government play a role due to one-size-fits-all regulations that can lead to unnecessary food waste. New York City officials, for example, have been criticized for destroying produce sold by street vendors because of a lack of government paperwork. Sanitation workers throwing fruits and vegetables in the garbage is one of the insane food waste facts that got New Yorkers upset. A case in point involved a street vendor in the Bronx named Diana Hernandez Cruz. The mother of 4 was working her produce stand on a street corner when she was approached by NYPD officers as well as other city officials. The officials told Ms. Cruz she didn't have the proper permits and they confiscated her entire inventory.
Carton after carton of fresh produce into garbage trucks.
Even if you never thought about food waste, it's easy to see that throwing away fruits and vegetables is not a good look. Governments have to have the authority to regulate the food industry, but it seems like there was room for a compromise that did not involve contributing unnecessarily to the problem of food waste. Order up more great videos. Just tap or click and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to join our notification squad.